Well, I'll tell you, I have a video about snoring. Your husband. But here's a video about snoring, and we'll see if that meets.
Sleepless nights I lie alone on a sofa hard as stone. Neath a blanket as best friend, I left the comfort of the king size bed. When my ears were stopped by the crash of a mighty rock that shook my heart. Oh God, the sound of snoring. Over the depths of night I heard 10,000 decibels clearly roar. Give me one night without respite, or the air through his noon whistling. Years ago I promised to love him till I die. I'm still trying. God, the sound of snoring. First I try to sleep alone, but it's like his microphone. Try a no-struggle, please, will you? 'Cause one more snore and I might kill you. There's no sleep when the mighty thunder rolls. It echoes the sound of snoring. And the neighbors all complain about the bleeding blanks he made. If I could just stop the sound forming, but the torture lasts until morning. At least I know the snores of my husband will cease when the sun ascends. But to him, I'm praying for the sounds of snoring.
So how many of you are plagued by the sound of snoring? Okay. I have my wife's a psychiatrist. I needed one, so I married one. And one of her psychiatrist friends said, basically she threw her partner out because he snores so bad. That's about as shallow as you can get, I think. But I have some shallow friends, and it's okay. So snoring can be a terrible thing. And your husband tells you snore? Does it wake him up?
No.
So if it doesn't wake you up, it's okay. And so we say we can do a sleep study to test. I'm going to just, because of the... So we do a sleep study to see how snoring, how things are affecting you. And what you see here on the right, this red means that every time the line drops, the patient goes to sleep. So is the patient sleeping much on the left? No, so every time it drops, he falls asleep, wakes up, falls asleep, wake up, and what he should be doing is he should be falling asleep, good stage 3 sleep, growth hormones released. In men, if they sleep well, their first rapid eye movement sleep, that's black, they'll release testosterone. But you notice in this person, if it was a man, he probably would have lower testosterone levels. And so some men have to supplement their testosterone without realizing that this is the problem, not that they really have low testosterone. So the body wants this, but if you're snoring and waking up all the time, that's what we end up seeing in a sleep study. And this is why we do a sleep study, to see what is it that's interrupting a person's sleep. But most people have other symptoms. You're sleepy during the day. You wake up, you say, boy, I just don't feel rested at all. And that's why you have a sleep study, to say, am I sleeping this way where I sleep pretty good? Or am I sleeping that way? Maybe that's the reason I'm tired all day. I can't think. I can't concentrate. I don't feel well. But that's why you have a sleep study. And the other thing that happens when you're sleeping, this line here is the oxygen. And instead of being a straight line, it's going up and down, up and down, up and down. So when you have sleep apnea, what happens is your tongue covers your airway, and we can simulate sleep apnea for every one of you. Do you want to? I'm serious. Your body feels a certain way when you have sleep apnea. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to blow all our air out, hold our nose, and try to suck air in, holding your nose and with your mouth shut for at least 10 seconds. Ready? Let's all of us try it. This is what your body's feeling with sleep apnea. So let all your air out, and hold your nose, and try to suck air in. Really try to suck air in. It's got to be at least 10 seconds. Work harder, work harder, work harder. There, that's 10 seconds. What did that feel like? That's what your body is feeling when you have sleep apnea. You don't realize it because your brain kind of flips into a different mode when you're sleeping. But all that work, didn't it feel like work? That's why your oxygen will literally drop 4, 5, 10 points in a matter of 10, 15 seconds, because you're working so hard to breathe. Children with sleep apnea, some of them can work so hard, they burn up so many calories, they don't grow very well. And if they don't go into stage 3 sleep, they don't release growth hormones, so there's two things working against them. And you fix their sleep apnea, and next thing you know, they just seem to pop right up. So, with sleep apnea, we say you can have that sensation 5 times an hour and it's normal. Doesn't feel normal though, does it? But if you have it above 15 times an hour, that's where you begin to increase cardiovascular problems, because your body's having all that sensation all night long. So what do we do with sleep apnea? Let me just pull a... I'm just going to fast forward because there we go. So when you have a sleep study, what happens is there's wires that go on your head, so we can tell the different stages of sleep. And so you're basically getting an EEG of the brain. Because different things happen, even as we get older, our brains change a little bit. There's some people that will fall asleep and exhibit really odd behaviors when they dream. People with Parkinson's, for example. But we'll see the EEG that they're perfectly asleep, but they're moving all over the place. And you say they must be awake, and they're not awake. They're perfectly asleep. So we monitor the EEG. There's a piece of plastic that looks like oxygen tubing that goes under your nose, and it's measuring air come in and out, so we can see how often you're breathing. Or if you have an obstruction, you stop breathing. Questions? You can stop me if you want, anytime. And there's a couple belts on the chest and the abdomen that sees the abdomen rise and fall. Because when you're breathing normally, you get this normal rise and fall. And there's oxygen tubing, And then there's a camera in every sleep study, and that's because some people have behaviors. Some people kick their legs all night. We don't usually treat that unless the spouse or partner says, I'm tired of being kicked. And there are some people that just, they move so much that we will treat them so that there can be happiness at home. Other people move their arms. Children can kind of exhibit some bizarre behaviors, sleepwalking, sleep talking, and you can associate it with what the brain is doing. So the camera is there just to monitor the sleep. And of course, if you lay there and don't move all night, that's pretty good. We like that. Just so you're breathing normally. A leg channel. And of course, there's always a nice young person to get you tied in there. And so what do we get with all that? That's what we get in a sleep study. So the top two lines, you get a nice set of eyes. We can see what the eyes are doing. And then we can see the brain. And there's an EKG for our heart rate. We can see if the legs move. That's what these lines are. We can see people snoring. That little hose that I said goes under the nose, that's these two channels. They can see the breathing go in and out, in and out. This is the chest, abdomen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide. Oops, oops, oops. Okay, so this is one page of a sleep study. So by the end of the night, we get about 800 to 1,000 pages. So sometimes when they say, you say, where's my sleep study? You did it last night. I want it now. Well, it's there. It's just we have to read it. And it took 8 hours to get it. It takes a little bit of time to read it and interpret it and get it back to you. So that's what a sleep study looks like by the time we're done. Now, if you have sleep apnea, what happens is, like when you're holding your nose, this line goes flat. And look what happens within a matter of 10 seconds. Oxygen goes from 96 to 81, just within 10 seconds. Because of that sensation you felt, you're working so hard, the oxygen just plummets. Oh, were you here when I had you hold your nose and breathe against your closed airway? No. Oh, okay. You want to do it? We can. Okay, so you hold your nose. And now close your mouth and try to suck air in for 10 seconds. Really try. Try it. Keep trying. There. What did that feel like?
Just felt like I was holding my breath.
Oh, you didn't pull hard enough. But when you pull against a closed airway, the tongue is laying over the airway, and you're trying to suck air in. You get this terrible feeling. And it's so much work that when you block the airway, this sensor goes flat or flattens, and because there's so much work, the oxygen will go from 96, and it varies in people. It may drop 3%, 5%. The record in the lab is 26%. So awake, that's incompatible with life, but asleep, the brain does different things. It's a whole different world, asleep. Questions on a sleep study? Because I think that was the goal, is to answer that question, what is a sleep study? So that's kind of what it is. And that's really the reason we do it, is if people have sleep apnea. No questions?
Under breathing, does that mean just a slow, really low level of?
Shallow breathing?
Yeah, is that what it is?
It can be either or. It can be that the tongue blocks the airway completely, where you just stop breathing. And when you stop breathing, at some point, the brain wakes up and it lifts the tongue off. And that's sometimes, if you have a partner that's got terrible apnea, I'll hear a spouse say, I have to elbow them to get them to breathe because they don't breathe. And so they're not going to die. The brain wakes up eventually. And sometimes people snore, they go, and you hear these terrible sounds at night. It's like a horror movie, you know, just all these noises going on. But eventually the brain wakes up. because it doesn't like dropping its oxygen. And it go, and so you'll hear people snore like that. And that's all they're doing. And every time the brain wakes up, but you don't sense that you woke up, but the brain wakes up because biologically that's how we've stayed alive all these years. Otherwise, the oxygen drops too much and
And the snoring is this big sucking in of air after they've just woken up, awakened?
well, the brain briefly awakens. It's still sleeping, but on the EEG, we'll see this movement in the brain. And the snoring is just trying to air against that blocked area going, it's just kind of barely coming through there.
That's what I just wondered. If they just woke up, is that when they snore, or are they snoring and then they wake up?
The snoring is part of the waking up
Okay.
piece.
Yeah.
Part of the waking up piece, yes. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I see on TV, New Mexico Sinus Institute said they do 6 individual treatment on your tongue to, can you comment on success of that procedure?
Well, it's pretty effective. There are some people that don't want to use CPAP. Because the only thing CPAP is doing is blowing in enough air that your tongue doesn't set back down. That's the way to think about it. And then you don't snore because the airway's open all the time. And so if you have a huge tongue, then it's almost like having a huge blockage. Children with Down syndrome, for example, a lot of them have sleep apnea. About 40% have sleep apnea because the tongue is so big. And so the Sinus Institute, I think they're the only people in the state that do this. They have a procedure, I haven't seen it done, but he explained it to me. They inject the tongue and somehow it reduces the mass. But it's a new procedure.
So, don't know.
I don't know. He says it's very effective, but it really is for people that, like if you have severe sleep apnea and there's no way in the world you're going to use CPAP, it's an alternative. CPAP isn't that bad. A lot of people like it. I have 2 men that tell me they'd rather have their CPAP than their wives. I don't know what to think about that. I haven't met their wives, but I thought that was interesting. But they love their CPAP machine. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a son who was recommended to use the CPAP and he won't do it, but he says if he sleeps on his stomach, then and I know he does wake up and he still snores, but how dangerous is it over time if you're not getting enough air or whatever? I mean, what are the hazards?
Well, it's a smart move that he sleeps on his stomach because if you think about it, on your back, your tongue lays on the airway. On your stomach, it doesn't. So you're better off doing that. But for many of us, we're not stomach sleepers. Or some of us, we've learned to sleep on our side and we've learned to sleep on our back for that very reason. Because our brain seems to know if you sleep on your back, tongue blocks the airway. So it really depends. There are some patients that have sleep apnea only on their back and none on their side. And if they like living that way, they should just live that way. They don't want to use CPAP. Just sleep on your side.
Is there a long-term effect on life expectancy if you're not getting enough air over time and not sleeping that well?
Yes. Because what happens, remember that sensation? Your blood pressure goes up. Your cortisol goes up. If you're diabetic, that's not good because now your blood sugars don't go down. And that's constant stress on the heart, stress on the brain, and over the course of years, there's a higher incidence of mortality. So it depends on how often you obstruct. Under 15, without symptoms, the body does okay per hour. If you're above 30, pretty much 3-fold increase in mortality. So increased stroke, increased heart attack, increased hypertension. So yes. There's one study that reports at the end of an apneic, it's a guy named Yagi, 2010, says he was measuring people, and at the end of one apneic episode, person's blood pressure went up to 240, which is pretty significant. But if you're struggling to breathe that hard, something's got to rise, and all those things rise. Cortisol, the sympathetic systems that makes you drive. The brain wants to relax, go to sleep, kind of drop everything, blood pressure, glucose, heart rate. That's what you're intended to do, but we don't do it. Yes, ma'am?
What about just long-term effects of not getting enough sleep? Not sleep apnea, but just,
Not getting enough sleep. People, particularly like shift workers who chronically don't get enough sleep, they have a higher mortality. A definite higher mortality, they have more diabetes, they have more cancer, women in particular have more breast cancer. So sleep has a strong immunologic function, and so we need sleep. Because we're so motivated and driven in society, we chop our sleep down. I mean, that's really what we do, with the exception of children. I mean, you have kids, you do what you got to do. I think you just commit yourself to 18 years of sleeping less or something, you know. But genetically, we need that sleep to really rebuild things. So people who genetically need 8 hours and always chop themselves down to 6 or 5, I mean, you can do it because we're so motivated, but health-wise, there's a price to pay somewhere down the line. And we're seeing that as we're watching long-term studies. You need to sleep.